Hello, my name's Tammy Naidu and I'm here today with our Vice Chancellor, Julia Goodfellow, to ask us some questions directly from the student body collected over social media over these past few weeks. So, Julia, starting off, looking at some questions regarding Kent as an institution, what would you say is Kent's biggest success this year?
Well, first of all, welcome. Very nice to be with you and be answering questions. I think we tried it last year. We've got a new way of doing it this year, which is great. The reason I said that is it's a rather difficult question because we've had rather a lot of successes. And so perhaps if I could sum up, it might be being shortlisted for the University of the Year by the Times Higher, because we sort of brought together a number of things that we've done around our success in teaching, the MSS, the 50th anniversary and research as well. So I'd definitely say being shortlisted for the Times Higher Award.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to the event as well. It should be really, really amazing, and I think that it is a great achievement for the university, so we should all be really, really proud. Linking on from that, why do you think that Kent is a good place to study?
I have to say the people, okay? When they were trying to recruit me, they kept telling me it was a really friendly place, the people are really lovely, and it is. I mean, the staff are fantastic. And I think we see that with the students as well. There's normally such a wonderful atmosphere at events, a real sense of belonging to the university, and I think that comes through in most of what we do. So I think that's one of the great things about it. I think we offer a good quality education, which is essential, a high quality education, but we try and offer more than the academic side. We try and offer the whole experience. We're in wonderful locations, whether here or by the Medway or in Paris or Brussels or Athens and Rome, which we might talk about later. But I think we try and offer a very good quality all-round student experience.
That's great, thank you. As well, there have been many big developments on the Canterbury campus recently, but what do you think is the next big thing for the university?
Completing the developments we've started, I think is really important. I mean, we've seen the library, and I think those of you who've been in the library will realise it is a fantastic space. I've certainly been in a couple of times and shown people around. And obviously we're doing the second bit of it, phase 2 we're now doing. We've got the new business school and maths stats, which is going up near the current business school between the campus and Parkwood. So I think getting on with those is really important and finishing them off. And we've obviously just seen Turing finished as well. I mean, there's a whole 10-year programme of building, but it is really important to get the buildings you started finished, completed on time and to budget.
Yeah, definitely. Talking a bit more about your job, so for students who don't know, what is it that you exactly do in your role? Like how many hours do you spend in the office? How many trips do you go on? What sort of things do you do?
Well, the Vice Chancellor is basically like a chief executive of a company. So, I managing director of the organisation, but obviously I work with enormous numbers of people, enormous number of staffs, because universities are very, very complex organisations nowadays. In terms of my own personal role, a large part of it is looking outwards. Now, it might be working locally with local people, it might be regionally, nationally, or even internationally. And certainly for the 50th anniversary year, I went overseas more than I would. Mainly seeing alumni around the world. I mean, it's amazing the thousands and thousands of alumni who wish us well around the world, but also seeing partner institutions and going to other countries where we want to establish relationships. Obviously, I've got a national role this year as President of Universities UK, so I do quite a lot on national higher education policy as well. When I'm here, I have a set number of meetings that I chair, whether it's around the executive or as I'm, like you, attending council and things like that. Or whatever, and being available for people who want to come and see me on there.
Could you talk to us a bit more actually about your role within Universities UK?
Well, Universities UK has been in existence for, I think, 98 years now. It's basically the committee of Vice Chancellors and Principals across the UK, across the 12 administrations as well as England. And every 2 years they elect, through a vote, a chair, if you like, and it's called the President. And I was elected earlier this year to serve for 2 years from the 1st of August. And I'm the first woman to be elected chair in the 100-year history of the organisation.
That's really amazing.
They got something right eventually.
Another question sort of relating to your role is, so considering the cuts to the university that are upcoming and the national education cuts, how can you justify the amount that a Vice Chancellor here at Kent will get paid?
Well, let's look at my salary. My salary is decided by the Remuneration Committee, which consists of 4 members of council, including the chair and the deputy chair. The director of hire of human resources will be there as well. I'm obviously not in the room, but the way it normally works is they will consider what is the going rate for a Vice Chancellor across the country, so they'll look at the range of values, the different types of institutions. They will look at the experience of the person, so how much experience I've got in roles or similar roles, and they will also look at the performance, my performance over a year. So every year I am appraised by the Chair of Council, I'm set objectives and I report on those objectives. My pay at the moment is about average, slightly below average for a Vice Chancellor.
Thank you. How about, so you've Crossways is the house the university pay for yourself, and what is it the house used for, and do you think this is fair when students have to pay so much to live on campus in what some might consider subpar accommodation?
Well, I would say there's a range of accommodation on campus, and as you know, we discuss the range of the prices of that accommodation, and we upgrade all the accommodation on a regular basis. So we certainly try and keep all the accommodation up to par, and some of it, certainly the new one, is fantastic quality. The house owned by the university was bought in the mid-1960s for the first Vice Chancellor. The university have owned it since then, and it's in my contract, again, from council, that my family, I have to live in the house. It's part of my contract that I have to live there. It's a very big house. If I clearly was going to buy something in Canterbury, that's not the house I would buy for myself and my husband. But it is used for parties of up to, well, in the garden, 100 or so people. I don't know if you've been there when there are 80 people on the ground floor of the house, but getting 80 people in any person's house is quite invasive. And we have wonderful staff who come in and cook, etc. So we do a number of events, sort of partnership events, bringing people into the local community. We bring the students in, obviously, once a year, as you know, after the beginning of term, to thank you all for that. And we do some garden parties in the summer, mainly for staff who've, new staff, to that, and that's always very, very well received. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just going to move on to some questions about student experience. So, a lot of campaigning has been taking place recently on the subject of academic free Wednesdays. What is your view on students having Wednesdays free to take part in extracurricular activities?
I'm very happy with the current arrangement by which we have Friday afternoon off for other activities, especially sport, and that's been part of university life for many, many years at most universities. It's also of benefit to the university because it means that we know most of our staff aren't teaching, and therefore we can have things like Senate and events like that. So it's useful to do that. I think we have to think very, very carefully about doing less teaching at a time when many students are talking about value for money, and there's a lot of criticism around whether students have enough face-to-face teaching. That's not to say I don't think that extracurricular activity is important, and I'm sure that will be your next question, but I think we would have to think very, very carefully. I think the messages we'd be sending would not be right. And perhaps it's in the word free, because you're not actually talking about free Wednesdays, you're talking about claiming it for other activity, really. So perhaps free Wednesday sounds like a day off, and that's not what your intention is at all, I know. So I think it really needs to be looked at very carefully.
Okay. Well, actually, you're right, because my next question actually does lead on to, do you think that extracurricular activities are worthwhile for students, and why?
What amazes me when I think about what students are doing today is how much work they're actually having to do. Not only do they have to work for a good degree if they want a graduate job, and obviously we have a lot of support for students in their academic work to make sure they, if they possibly can, achieve that. But nowadays, when it comes to the job market or further study, people are looking, have they done more? So the other activities can be important. It can be like joining your clubs, running the societies. I go to a lot of music events, so seeing what the amateur music at Kent is fantastic. The things we do is offer a year abroad, or study or work abroad is very important. And of course, all the whole work experience agenda is incredibly important. So yes, I think it's actually part and parcel of student life these days.
What do you think of the value of a co-curricular education? So looking at having a good balance, as you mentioned, between the academic and the extra, or the other stuff like sports and societies and sort of those employability skills.
As I said, I think students work incredibly hard and you have to do both, but obviously getting a good degree should be a focus. But what we can do, I think, on a campus university, and a university like Kent, is offer other experiences as well that you can take. And as I said, you just have to look at the people doing music or the people doing sports, your wonderful sports clubs, etc. And just a whole range of activity at the university. The volunteering, sorry, I should have mentioned volunteering. 100,000 hours last year. I mean, absolutely amazing. And I think they're the sort of things that when you go to job interviews that you can talk about, which will make students stand out, make you stand out.
Great, thank you. On that, actually, how involved are you with student activities? Do you ever read the student newspaper or keep up to date with how the sports teams are doing?
I certainly read the student newspapers, both Inquirer and Medway, and don't just read them because you're asking me questions. They normally appear in my mail, but I do read them, and I read them with interest because obviously it's one way of understanding what students are thinking. I mean, the other one is the regular meetings I have with you and other members of the SAB team, which we meet on a monthly basis or more to go through what the issues are, and I think we always start with what issues are at the top of your agenda, and I think that works well for both of us. No, I don't go to sports events. I do tend to go to quite a few music events if I'm around on that. You have a very large number of sports events on that, and no, I don't always know how the teams are doing. I know women's hockey has done very well in the past.
Well, we'll definitely get you an invite out for varsity this year. What would you say to critics who see the university spending on events like the 50th anniversaries as mere frivolity when some of the accommodation on the Canterbury campus, like Rutherford, Elliot and Darwin, is considered quite appealing and run down by some?
Well, I think we've come back to this thing of accommodation. As you know, we offer a range of accommodation, and we know when people apply, they often apply for the newest accommodation, en suite, and the most expensive. But as you well know, when they come to university, many people want cheaper accommodation. We regularly update all the accommodation on campus, even in the older colleges, and we absolutely recognise that Darwin and Elliot and Call Rutherford were built some time ago, and on that. So I think it's a matter of keeping to updating our accommodation, but making a range of accommodation available. You mentioned the 50th anniversary event. I think when we look what happened over the last 5 years, and especially during the 50th anniversary year, we've raised more money than ever before for the Kent Opportunity Fund, which benefits students. We've brought more and more people onto campus, especially locally. We've also had a lot of alumni. I think over 2,500 alumni came back to the campus, as well as the visits we did around the world. We met with 100 people in Hong Kong, 100 people in Malaysia. Amazing events. Alumni are very important. Word of mouth about the university, raising money for scholarships, offering advice to students that have come over here for their home country about getting jobs when they go back. So I think all these events mean that the amount of money we spent on it, which was the budget was 350,000, was actually money well spent.
Great, thank you. You mentioned earlier actually the building work on campus, and got a question about the development on campus, meaning that you can't walk. Meaning, yeah.
Work or walk.
I mean, you can't walk anywhere without seeing building work or at some point on your journey. What would you say to those first years who are currently living on campus, and then particularly those who are living on building sites, and how would you justify them paying such high rates to live in these conditions?
Well, first of all, the buildings that they're living in, people before them were walking around the campus when they were being built. Obviously, we try and renew what's there. We've had a very popular university. We've had an expansion in students, so we've been building more accommodation, more academic things. Remember, the first thing we did was to extend the library as the core building for students across the campus. So every generation has had to live with the building of new buildings on campus. We come back to substandard accommodation, the price of accommodation. We look at the price every year, as you know. We have a range of prices. We compare them with other prices in the southeast, and they really are not out of line with those prices.
Mm-hmm. I think perhaps this question might be picking on particularly sort of what's been happening in Turing over the past year or so, I'd imagine. And obviously it was the most expensive accommodation on campus, and it was still very much a building site for most of last year and still a bit so this year as well. So what's your thought on that?
Well, obviously we would have wished Turing was built rather faster than it was. I think part of the reason for the relatively slow process towards the end was the fact that we came out of recession as a country, so the building market just blossomed, and so it was very hard for the contractors to get staff to come in. Now, as you know, we contract out the building and running cost of building Turing, as we did with Wolf College. We got some money back. As you know, students were put up free of charge in hotels, etc. right at the beginning. Obviously it was suboptimal, I absolutely accept that, or whatever. But I think we are there now, and I think we're formally opening it in about a week's time, which I look forward to. And I hope that students are there to celebrate.
My next question is about sort of like MSS and league tables. What is the university doing to make sure it's consistently doing what's best for students, rather than just simply ticking boxes?
Well, I think I agree with the questioner. I think ticking boxes doesn't do anything, and I hope we don't go about ticking boxes. Clearly, we have to be aware that what the league table's looking at, but I've always said the fundamental two things in the league tables are basically nowadays the NSS and the results of the ref. So we've done what we can into the two basic things, which is our teaching and our research, and I hope we always focus on that.
Next, I'm going to move into some questions about student safety and well-being. So in terms of support for students, what does Kent do in terms of counselling services? And do you think they should be improved, as more and more students around the country are reported to have mental health issues?
Well, I think we have a good counselling service here. As you know, Wayne Campbell is our Director of Student Services and Wellbeing, and I think we have developed through him and through the Masters a range of counselling services for students, and also a range of training for staff, because often it won't be those counselling staff who recognise it. It may well be a master or somebody in a college or somebody in an academic school. So I think it's first of all recognising sometimes that students need more support, and then getting them to the right support, and clearly that's monitored all the time to make sure that we do provide enough. I believe about 800 students attended some form of counselling at Kent last year.
Thank you. Another matter more related to safety is about the number of sexual assaults on campus in the recent years. What are you and the university doing to improve the security on campus, not only for the students who live here, but also the students who live just off campus and are walking home late at night?
Yeah. Clearly a very serious issue for everybody. Luckily, Canterbury remains a relatively safe area, and the number of assaults are relatively low. Of course, any assault should not happen. We certainly regularly review campus security. We also talk with students. I thought it was a very nice article in Inquirer, the last Inquirer, by Libby, who talked about safety and the benefit of both the university and the individual being aware of their own safety. I think the walk home scheme, you talk walking taxi, is it called, or something? You can call. You can ask Campus Watch to escort you back. I think that is not used enough. I think people should be aware of that if they're on their own, obviously walking with other people, making sure there's lighting across the campus. And I think it's November the 25th, there's a walk at night across campus to check security. We have quite a large number of Campus Watch people on duty all night between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m, 5 a.m, just to make sure that the campus is safe, looking at the main places. But if students are aware of issues, then they should report them.
On the topic actually of walking home late at night, what is the university's thoughts on the consultation that's currently happening from Kent County Council in regards to the street lights, particularly those down the St Michael's area, which is a key route for students walking home?
Well, obviously one would want areas, I mean, across the campus we obviously look at lighting as one of the key areas, and we hope they will take that into account. We have, of course, got a bus service now that runs 24 hours, so students can get the bus back. Many students have the annual passes, so there's no reason they shouldn't be on the buses coming back at night as well.
So has Kent County Council been consulting with the university?
Not to my knowledge, but it
Okay.
doesn't mean that they haven't.
Okay, thank you. Some questions about the other campuses. So the university already has 4 European campuses. Are there any plans for any current? Are there any current plans for further expansion into Europe?
Not at the moment. Certainly Brussels, we've just moved to, as you know, brand new premises, bigger, better and cheaper. So we're very, very pleased with them. You came over with council, as I did, last month, and it was really lovely to have the opening of those. Paris, we're looking to expand. Same with Rome and Athens. So I think it's more about embedding where we are rather than looking at new centres there. That's not to say we will never start a new centre, but there are no formal plans at the moment about that.
Thank you. This one's a bit more close to home. So the university has recently released an infographic detailing the investments the student experience. What investments have there been in Medway?
A very large number. The quality of the accommodation in Medway is higher on average than it is at Canterbury, partly because it's newer, so a lot of investment went in when it was set up for the 3 core buildings on the campus, and also the shared buildings like Pilkington, etc. Since then, as you know, we've looked at an extended Bistro 1, number 1.
Number 1 bistro.
Sorry?
Number 1 bistro.
Number 1 bistro. We've also...
our resident Medway student.
I got bistro and number 1. It used to be called the Gulbenkian, I think.
Yeah.
And we've also started the new cafe at Cargo underneath Liberty Quays. Recently, a lot of the work we've been doing has been on the historic dockyard. School of Music and Fine Art was a lot of money went into refurbishing there. And most recently, I was there when we opened the Sale and Colour Loft for the business school, for the new premises there, and also the absolutely phenomenal new lecture theatre, which was in the old church on the dockyard, which is just absolutely stunning. Building now, which we've agreed also that local people can use for a certain number of days a year because it's very close to the local community. Obviously refurbishing a church needs sensitivity in that. We've also got the work going on C4. I never know if it's D4 or C4, but I think it's C4, which is the joint facility with Greenwich, which took a long time to get off the ground but has now happening there. So I think there is considerable investment going on in Medway.
Thank you. And on that note, actually, how often would you say you go to Medway?
I go when there are meetings there, and obviously we try and have regular meetings there. So e.g. Managers Forum and council meetings. The council meeting at the end of March is there. I go for various events. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we've got a dean for Medway. We have very good heads of school and heads of discipline there. So really, it's very similar to as if I was invited over to the business school. You know, I don't have to wander around the business school to see are they functioning, etc. But I go when required and when needed. To there.
Well, thank you very much, Julia. That's all my questions.
Okay.
So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Tammy.